Without God's eternal perspective, our achievements are like chasing after the wind. So consider a man named John who was a successful tech entrepreneur in his 40s, and he spent decades building up a startup company. He worked 80-hour weeks. He was driven by this desire to become a billionaire. And when the company went public, he achieved his goal, but he found that it was meaningless, that his marriage had suffered, his health had suffered, and he realized that money could not buy him peace. And he later said, "I was chasing a reflection of success, but it left me empty." Only when we begin to seek God's purpose do we find meaning in our achievements. So if we look at the cultural context of Ecclesiastes, we find that it was written following the Babylonian exile, when the exiled Jews returned to Jerusalem, rebuilt the temple, and began to become more connected to their identity as Jewish people, and also made Jerusalem the center of worship. And that Ecclesiastes reflects the Jewish wisdom tradition of wrestling with vanity and the meaning of life. Now, traditionally, this has been attributed to Solomon, King Solomon. And it is quite possible that it may have been written by an anonymous sage known as the preacher. But for all intents and purposes, I tend to consider the traditional source of who it is. And yet this person, possibly Solomon, was reflecting upon the philosophy of what is the meaning of life, the existential questions. Who am I? Who is God? Why are we all here? What is the purpose of life? And so that the people at that time would have been wrestling with that as they were seeking to rebuild their country, to be reconnected to their identity, who they were, and who was God in the midst of them rebuilding their lives. So at times we may reflect upon, what are we doing? What are we seeking? Do we find meaning in our lives at every point and stage of our life? So it is important at times that we take time to pray and meditate. God, what is your purpose for me during this stage of my life? So number one, the vanity of self-centered pursuits can lead us to number two, foolishly trust in earthly riches. So our scriptures point us to seek the riches of God. And our call to worship is from Psalm 49. Now, this psalm was considered to be written by the Sons of Korah. They were a group of Levites and temple musicians, and they are known for contributing to the book of Psalms, and that this psalm focused on wisdom and worship. And it's a meditation on the vanity of wealth, and yet the inevitability of death, emphasizing that wisdom and spiritual development are more valuable than worldly wealth and possessions. And that's why we have also the parable of the rich fool, that Jesus was telling this story to his disciples and all those who were present. And it's all about a man who was hoarding his wealth for himself. And he was addressing the vain attempts of both the Roman culture and the Jewish culture that would focus on the blessings of God coming only to those who were wealthy. And that this was not something that Jesus thought was true. He thought to teach them the error of this philosophy and belief. Just like the rich fool staring at his barns, we become obsessed, some of us, with accumulating wealth.